today's film was chosen by Fernando.
Yeah.
Can you introduce it to us, Fernando?
Well, I have a friend, Osvaldo. Thank you very much for recommending this film. Who has been recommending some films that I've enjoyed, and he said, well, this one is also really good. So I was like, well, if he thinks it's good, it's probably because it is. So I guess I'll just choose it. And then I'm not sure what to think about it. As in, what do you all think about it?
I'm pretty torn on it.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't sure at all. I think I liked it. It didn't horribly offend me or anything, but it also wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't amazing in some other ways. It was. I was on edge a bit the whole time because I couldn't figure out where it was going. And now that it's over, I think I still didn't quite figure it out. It seemed like a really interesting piece of art that possibly didn't result in a really good watchable film.
Right.
That was my point of view. Laura?
Interesting. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was great. Yeah, I thought it was far, far better than Requiem for a Dream, I have to say.
Yep.
So yeah, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it all the way through. And then at the end I was like, great. Well, fab. Love that.
All right.
Wow.
It was your point of view I was particularly interested in hearing because of all the stuff we've talked about
Yeah,
for these kinds of films as well, the subject matter.
It definitely wasn't perfect, but I thought it really... I thought it did well. I thought I didn't find it offensive, or I wouldn't pick it apart for being like horrendously stigmatizing or anything, which I felt with Requiem for a Dream was really just awful. Not awful. Like, I think it was a good film, but I thought this was a good film, and I thought it did it really well. I thought it told the story very well.
Okay.
Yeah. Claire, what did you think?
I think I probably agree with Michael. I found it very difficult to get a handle on the narrative. I found the tone changed from scene to scene, and that sort of unsettled me. I never really got into the story because of that. I think there was a good film in there, but I think I just lost the thread a few times.
I see. That makes sense. What did you think,
It was
Fernando?
probably a little bit too slow, I think, at times. And by at times, I meant all the film, maybe.
It was quite a slow burn, wasn't it? It just was very methodically moved through these different scenes and different locations and characters. I like that.
Okay.
Indeed. But yeah, I thought it had a really purposeful kind of... I thought it was really structured. It was really neatly crafted, like with a lot of purpose, and there was no real chaos. It was all very orderly. Like I saw what I think they were trying to do with each part.
Oh, what were they trying to do?
Well, okay. Strap in for a bit.
Okay.
I've got a lot of notes. This is what I think it was trying to do. It was trying to... I think it's based on a book. I think it's based on a book that gives this kind of portrayal of what life is like as a drug user in America.
So for me, it felt a lot like a book. I can't remember what it is now. Is it Junkie? That would make sense because William Burroughs wrote it, and William Burroughs was in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might have... So at the start, that's why the tone thing confused me, because the tone was very much like this, like that book. And it was quite harrowing. Not harrowing, but less... didn't have any jokes in it, put it that way. This had a few funny things. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, this surprised me by being as light as it was. There was never really a moment of like with Requiem for a Dream where everything just spirals and spirals and it's so full of despair, and you just end it being like, what's life? It's awful.
Yeah.
Because I think it had its like obviously dark moments, but it was mostly carried through with that kind of methodical, just seeing things unfold, but nothing, I don't know. This always happens. I'll pencil in time to gather my thoughts a bit better.
Oh, did you finish watching this like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I meant to watch it yesterday, but I didn't have time.
Minutes ago.
I had 5 minutes. I went and got myself a glass of water and then settled down.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So I thought about it with that. Anyway, this is what I think they were doing. Right. We begin. So I think it's trying to give an intimate portrait of, like I said, life as a drug user, which is that you begin very close to the main characters and you spiral outwards into other kind of, to other domains and other kind of characters that impact on their life. So we begin, it sets it up nicely with the theft. We're instantly introduced into their group dynamics. So we see a kind of argument about how they're going to distribute the drugs. It shows us their hierarchy, their place within the group. And then it gives us, we go into them actually using the drugs. Then we meet another drug user who's also a kind of low-level dealer. Then it gives us a kind of portrayal of their romantic relationships. So we're into the romance side, which is that it's kind of that strained sexuality where there's, they're mismatched a bit. There's kind of tension within the group there. More drug use. And then we see the police relationship. So we're expanding outside the group a bit there. With that first interaction with the police where they storm in on them. Then we go to their family relationships where he meets his mother and things like that. So we see that kind of, again, we're going outside of their initial location. We're starting to see their family. So it's this kind of very logical progression through these different kind of domains of life from romantic, police, family, other drug users. We have a brief talk about pets. Then we see the police corruption where they're plotting how they can kind of get them if they plant drugs on them and things like that. Then we see their neighborly relationships, which is the old lady, the big guy, where they're mocking them. They're being very sneaky, but kind of ingenious about how to thwart the police. Then we get this insight into the police brutality where they're getting beaten up by the police. And that takes us to halfway through the film where we've kind of gone through all these different domains of life and relationships and things like that. And then I think there's a kind of shift where we progress less away from relationships and more to kind of incidents, things that are naturally going to kind of occur and happen within their life, which is that we see more of the theft, which is very an opportunistic kind of theft where they see that window open. And then that leads to a much bigger, more ambitious, but very poorly planned theft where they go to the hospital and there's that kind of caper with the hospital. Then there's the death from overdose of Nadine, which is also, sure, there's a lot of symbolism there that we can get into. But then there's this kind of turning point, but it's been accumulating all the way through where he begins his methadone program and we start to see the rhythm of this life in the system and things like that, which again, we can go back into. But then, he gets a job. He intervenes within a drug sort of someone in drug debts, things like that. Diane visits again. There's this return of his sexuality as we see, but then it ends with this violent attack, whereas this past life is just coming back on him and trying to drag him back in. And it all ends with a contrast, which is that the neighbor is now kindly and the police officer is now kindly, which is very contrasted with the brutality of earlier. And then it ends, and that's what I think it was doing. It was that very neat structure of progressing through all of these different aspects of life with relationships and with incidents. Those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you for listening.
Perfect.
That took a while. My apologies.
No, great stuff. So, film of 2 acts, where the first one is establishing who these people are and what world they live in. Mm-hmm. And the second act is progressing that, exploring it, and turning things on their head.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good... I can see more structure to it, though. When I was watching it, I was sort of thinking, this is meandering a bit. Where the hell is this going?
Mm. And
then it just sort of ends when, we don't know whether he's going to die or not. But no, and with that foreshadow that at the start there was something sort of neatly symmetrical about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it did kind of bookend with that. Yeah, that kind of mirror where you see this joyful kind of where they're all cavorting in the underpass sort of thing, and it's very Hard Day's Night sort of style of filming. And then it ends on that as well, where there's this also kind of like question of joy versus despair sort of thing.
Yeah. I was terrified when they had that, artsy, low quality camera, people hiding behind beams and stuff. I thought, oh fuck, this is going to be song to song again, isn't it? It's just going to be meaningless, aesthetic shots that don't really do anything of people smiling and close up of like people's midriffs and stuff. But I was very glad to see that they just did that for like a minute at the start and a minute at the end, and that set the tone nicely. That was good. But yeah, I see what you're saying there. You're right that it explores things quite nicely. And would you say it was a fair representation of life as an addict, as you understand it?
I think so. I wouldn't try and overly generalize it, but yeah, I think that's I think it was very realistic. It seemed to be very accurate in places. There are things that I think it was missing a little bit, and things that could maybe do with being added in, but there are also that some of the things that it was missing, I think, are often included in these kind of films and end up really stigmatizing drug. It kind of skipped over a bit of stuff that was more harder, kind of more gritty, despairing things. Like, we didn't really see anyone go into like terrible withdrawal, which was interesting. I thought that would be part of it. There was no real...
They were good at what they did.
They were really good at what they did, yeah. But, and then he just very smoothly transitioned to methadone, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, how hard is it to... Because obviously methadone is there to aid the transition away from using heroin and stuff. Does it make it a lot easier, or is it...
It's supposed to be. It depends on your prescriber. So you're meant to prescribe enough that you don't feel any sort of withdrawal, which makes it quite easy. But the problem is that it becomes very difficult to stick to, because there's no, from what I kind of gather, there's no real pleasure afforded in methadone. It doesn't really tackle any of the reasons why a person would use drugs in the first place.
Okay.
Like it's just, and then everything becomes a different kind of routine, which becomes quite jarring, I think, to jump across to, which you see, which again, was a bit different in this film, because in this film they had a lot of order. It was very precise. I suppose not. I suppose there was a lot of opportunism as well, but it wasn't chaotic in any sense. There wasn't a sense of real things were getting out of hand or getting out of control, apart from when Nadine died. But again, that wasn't really, it didn't feel like it was part of that had to happen or anything. That felt like an accident.
So this is one thing I thought was interesting, and you saying that it's in two parts, I think kind of fits in quite nicely, was just the boredom in the first half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just sitting around, like you take your hit and then it's not like they were getting up and doing anything. It didn't look very fun. But as you say, it wasn't chaotic. It was just this routine of, you use your stuff until you need to find more kind of thing. And then it was a different routine in the end. It was get up, go to work, buy enough groceries to see you through to the next day, go to the meeting, come back, go to sleep, get up for work again. And like they very quickly established that new routine for him. But yeah, none of it was sort of two different types of boredom. Like,
yeah,
there
definitely.
Was lack of activity and then just routine activity in the two halves.
I think that's a really good part. People mention boredom all the time. I mean, and I think that's very temporal as well, the way that you structure time and fill empty time, which is obviously in the first time where there is that long periods of boredom, but you're filling it with drugs, so there's not that same sense of emptiness that needs to be kind of conquered, where I think that's why people struggle sometimes with that routine of methadone, which is that it's just, there's nothing really to fill that empty time in between your structured activities. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
What else? But yeah, I thought they did a lot of like I was saying, I thought they had some really interesting, like very small details, which again, why I like the film, which is that there was a kind of like close attention to detail, which kind of rang true. Just with the actual, like the drug use itself. So like very structured, like we were saying, there was a lot of logic and superstition that were kind of jarring against each other, which was really interesting. This kind of that, the hat on the bed, the hexes, the things like that, which were all kind of embedded into their psyche, the way that they did things.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what that was getting at. What was that to do with?
I think it was an interesting, well, it obviously drove the characters into new action within the film, but I think from reading and from researching as well that there's just a particular culture that lends itself to this kind of logic and superstition way of structuring it. But I'm not sure. I thought it was interesting. There were other things that were just specific to drug use, like the way that they were. Did you see in the beginning when they drew back some blood into the syringe?
Oh yeah, aspirating.
Very kind of common, almost ritualistic kind of practice, which is called booting and jacking, where there's this idea that it will give you more pleasure if you draw blood back and it kind of gets mixed with the drugs and then you inject it again, kind of gives you a new rush.
That's really interesting, because I think it must come from just finding a vein, and you know that you're injecting directly into a vein in that case. Like medically, people do that,
right?
But it's a way of guaranteeing that the hit it goes straight into your bloodstream, so you'll get the hit immediately. So that's interesting that there is like logical scientific reason for doing that, but there's a kind of mythology attached to it.
Okay.
That it's pre-mixing with your blood, somehow that's improving the hit or something.
That's funny. And I guess we get this with a lot of superstitions, right? That there's kind of some reason for them that they've started, like not walking under a ladder. Some people are really particular about not walking under ladders because it's bad luck. But actually, there's loads of good reasons not to walk under ladders, like a high chance of some kind of accident happening.
Yeah.
You're best steering clear of them. That sort of seems to make sense somehow.
And I think the dog thing made sense in context in this film, because it's, a path straight to your door. And so dogs are bad luck is obviously nonsense, but it's maybe not sensible to have a dog. In that situation.
That's come from somewhere.
Logic.
But the hat thing, I couldn't rationalise it at all. I couldn't work out where that came from.
Yeah, I couldn't get that.
Is that a saying at all, or is that specific to this film? I didn't look it up.
I've never heard of a hat on a bed.
Hat on a bed.
There's a saying, wherever I lay my hat, that's my home, or something.
Oh, no, it's apparently, I've just Googled it, a myth. It's a well-known myth that it suggests that somebody's died. Historically, during some funerals, a hat was placed over the closed portion of the casket near the feet of the deceased. Right. So it has the connotation of the casket, which was said to evoke the dead person's spirit.
There we go.
I see.
That makes sense.
So, I get it. Yeah, so there is logic. I just didn't know about it.
Yeah. I suppose we could bring this back to St Andrews, right? So we have a monument to a martyr in front of St Salvator's Chapel. These initials PH, where Patrick Hamilton was burned to death. I guess you can kind of see why you wouldn't want to step on that, because that's quite a either disrespectful or just a grim and chilling thing to do, to walk over the place where someone was put to death in such a horrible way. And eventually that has turned into, it's bad luck. If you step on that, you'll never graduate, or whatever.
Yeah, because I suppose the connection to Patrick Hamilton's lost now, but there's a respect around that piece of ground. And you kind of have to give people a reason that they can connect with.
Yeah, which I'm sure has just come up naturally at some point. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's another instance of how this can happen.
I was talking to one of my old students the other day. We just met up for a coffee and a catch up, and she was saying how they'd been discussing amongst their friends that they were kind of the last people in the 4 years in the that frame of the degree time frame that we're going to be graduating out, and that after that, because of the pandemic, had severed these traditions, and there was going to be no one to pass them on now to academic families, and because of this, all the people have had to be at home and not received these traditions. I mean, it's very overdramatic, because I think they will outlast a bump like that. So.
Well, it's worth thinking, isn't it? Because that will be kind of 2 years straight that a lot of these traditions haven't happened. Yeah, but I guess with a broad population that covers 4 years, you'd think that stuff could survive. No, it's a funny one, though.
Yeah.
It's an academic generation, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
People who started in first year will never have been kids, and they'll be starting their third year having to be parents.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the parents, aren't they? Wow. Perhaps this is all a very good advertisement for recording things using the written word and preserving traditions for generations to come, so that through a lack of structure, culture need not be lost.
But you
I
could
think
lose
that's very
some
cheeky.
aspects of it.
If you want to hear more about what we're discussing, go ahead and listen to the episode on the song catcher, which you will notice is twice as long as any of the other episodes.
Because it was such a good film.
It was a really good film,
Were we
not as good as Knives
hours?
Out. No, it was about 1 hour and 40, I think. It was a long episode, that one.
You're not going to win me over.
No, nor would I hope to.
And we have the record to show it.
Yes. Sorry. So, Drugstore Cowboy. Yeah, that was interesting with the superstitions and stuff. And I guess that it's interesting. Yeah, I had no idea that drawing the blood out has superstition attached to it.
Yeah,
but that's
there's
interesting.
more logic to it as well. I think where there's this idea that there will be residue left in the. I'm not entirely sure how this works. It's more of an American thing. Although people do it over here, but I didn't hear the specific explanation. But it was in a book that I was reading about America, where they're like, it cleans out the residue of the drugs, that they're paranoid about leaving every tiny residue of the drugs gets flushed out that way.
Okay.
So there
Which
is a
of
lot
course
of
can't
logic.
be true.
No.
Yeah, almost like you're rinsing it with your blood.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought something else that they missed that was interesting that they didn't really show was that a lot of people, it was built into the rhythm of their lives that they would just take drugs when they got them, but there wasn't this kind of stress response of taking drugs. It wasn't like we were really seeing, like I feel with Requiem for a Dream, every time something horrible happened, they would just instantly, and same in Trainspotting, every time something horrible happens, they take drugs as a response, which I think is a very well documented reason for taking drugs, which is that kind of what he was saying in the beginning of this narrative, where he's like, it just takes all your stress away and you don't have to think about it, and it just pushes these bad experiences, which are born of trauma and this sort of poverty and things like that. But it was interesting that they didn't take drugs after Nadine died, which I thought was very odd. But then it was contrasted with later when he was like, oh, you have to take, he was talking to the woman at the methadone clinic, saying you just need something to relieve the pressures of everyday life, like having to tie your shoes. Fascinating.
Yeah.
We need to get out of this malaise, this boredom, by taking these drugs to alleviate it. And yet when someone actually dies, which is actually the drive for the rest of the film, no drugs.
Yeah. So one thing I was trying to get here was, I think I was finding it difficult to figure out when they were high and when they weren't, because I think a few of them had this kind of disconnected, listless look to them the whole time. And particularly when they talked about driving and having a hole in the floor of the car so that they could keep the drugs out the whole time they were driving unless the police came, and then they could quickly stash them and get them back out again as soon as the police had gone. And that made me think, wait, are they just high all the time? Do people just keep it up, basically? Just take some as soon as they wake up and keep it going? So were they high throughout that whole scene?
I think the thing with the car was just so that they could dispose of them in case they got searched. They just had them handy to throw out.
Oh, I see.
Like a
because they were just sort of picking up a handful at a time so that they could always get rid of that small amount.
I see. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think I didn't follow that then. Yeah, so it's funny that they would miss that out, because I remember that in Trainspotting they made a real point of that.
That they were always high?
No, that they, as you say, would get high in response to something that was difficult. There's even the one phrase in it that reminds me, I think they've gone to someone's funeral, something tragic has happened.
Just a baby.
And they said, so, yeah, is that it? They say, so we took the immediate decision to get hooked on drugs again immediately, as soon as we possibly could.
Oh, right, no, that's different.
No, maybe
I was just thinking about when the baby
remember.
dies and he says, I did the only thing I could think of. I cooked.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's funny that they would miss that out, but yeah, maybe they were trying to communicate something else.
Well, that was a real moment for him, wasn't it? That's when everything changed for him.
Oh, that's what made him decide to go straight, right?
Yeah. So I wonder if there was some... Because he talks about the stress and, like, tying your shoelaces isn't a stressful thing to have to do, but it's mundane and monotonous, and maybe the drugs are an antidote to that.
Yeah, I think that is what it was trying to say.
This isn't mundane. This is huge,
cataclysmic.
Yeah, and so you don't need them at that point. I don't know.
I wondered if it was maybe, like you were saying, that it's kind of mundane, but it's also designated in the kind of like things that you have to worry about when you're straight. But whereas someone dying of an overdose is so expected and so normalized, and like these are kind of traumas that are just continually happening, that it's more normal, whereas tying shoes is not normal. But I don't know if that's what they were actually trying to get at. I don't think so, but it was an interesting kind of juxtaposition, I thought.
Certainly he didn't seem to be shocked by the death, did he?
No, well, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think, Fernando? Do you think?
I think I'm enjoying the film much more now that we're discussing it.
I am.
Oh, I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot going on with it. I think it's, there's interest. You can pick at it. I mean, it's obviously, I don't know if they meant that to happen, but I found it interesting to think about.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely a lot to it. Just, whether I enjoyed watching it is a different...
But it wasn't as challenging as something like Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrifying on the whole. And I appreciated that they weren't like deliberately tugging at our heartstrings trying to make us feel things. They were just, giving a story.
I think it was more empathetic that way. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Because I think the problem with Requiem for a Dream was that it didn't lend itself to much empathy. Sorry, I've just looked, the pub landlord's on the roof of like a 4-story building. That's weird.
Oh my God.
Anyway, it creates too much distance between you and the characters where you just can't possibly... There's just too much despair to really feel like it's in any way close to you. Whereas this one, I feel like these were just regular people that we could easily see how their lives worked and how they could end up in those situations. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, so Requiem for a Dream was just a nightmare, wasn't it? And it was just things are terrible, no nuance. Whereas this was kind of, it felt more like a story about real people that have their ups and downs, and they have good days and bad days, and they can go straight or they can do more drugs.
Yeah.
And they can get a job or they can carry on robbing. And it felt more like a rounded film. And I can see what you mean about empathy. Because certainly Requiem for a Dream, you felt terrible for these poor people in this horrendous situation. But this one, at least I felt more like, they're going to make a decision now and decide what to do next. And and there was some humour as well, some light-hearted moments.
Yes, I enjoyed that as well. Do you think, was it moralising? I think it did have a little bit of a moral thread, but certainly, again, that was where I would contrasted to Requiem for a Dream, which was very obviously hugely moralising. But
I don't think it was. It didn't seem to be saying drugs are great, you should rob pharmacies, but at the same time, it certainly wasn't saying you'd have to be an idiot to do drugs, and you're a bad person if you take them. and I think that was good.
Mm.
Would you say it was moralizing?
I don't think it was. I think for a while they were kind of going with like there's salvation and virtue in recovery.
Yeah.
But they didn't really contrast that with like when we saw Diane, she wasn't in the pits of despair.
Yeah.
She was just living her life like in the way that she had to and could, and it wasn't overly demoralizing or
Yeah, that's right.
which I liked. And I think it had this kind of focus on the system as well, that, you know, it focused a bit on the wider context, just a little bit, just at the end when we're seeing the kind of the questions that he has to answer to get part of the methadone. You can just imagine so many people being asked those questions about their history and their, you know, you see these patterns developing and him kind of rebelling a bit against that, but it's kind of very, we're in a different context altogether now. And then with the priest as well, I thought that was interesting, where he was talking about how right-wingers will use drug hysteria to like create this carceral system of like where you're just constantly putting people in jail for drug offences and things like that. So
yeah, now that I wasn't sure about that bit. It seemed so out of place in the film. The film was so much showing us rather than telling us things.
Yeah, that was very soapboxy.
Yeah, it almost felt like
yeah.
the foreword where, you know, the message from the director, and it was it seemed kind of bizarre. And he was quite right in a way, and it made sense showing it in a sort of context of, look, in the 1930s or whatever, drugs weren't seen in this same way. That narcotics haven't always been this crazy bugbear that everyone should be terrified of. And that was some useful context. But particularly saying, I predict that in 10 years, shortly after I've died, there will be a right-wing thing and they're going to crack down on all of the drug users. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you know this now. You made the film in 1989. You just had the Reagan administration. Don't act like you're predicting something where you're just saying, this happened. It really stood out. And I think they could have been a bit more subtle or a bit more intelligent in exploring that.
I was confused by the priest a bit. I actually have in brackets at one point, what's the point of the priest? Because he just didn't really fit in my kind of structure. And then when he visited him and he went on to say that, I was like, I guess he's just the mouthpiece for this view, which is right and belongs there. But I think you're right. It just didn't. It is telling us, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know that old saying, tell, don't show.
Exactly. And even all of that, I think, would have been quite good. And it made sense having him there as, this is another type of drug user. Who has a completely different outlook and has a different history, and that was worth having in there. And if he had even told the story about having the guards help him shoot up in jail, that would have been interesting. And they just went a bit far with it. But no, it was good. It was odd having him, almost one of the last things we see is him looking out of the window, isn't it?
Yeah.
As if he, as if we're meant to think, what do we think of him? He's important somehow. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what that was about.
Are we supposed to blame him a bit? Is he turning his back on this situation that he's caused? Because he was part of Bob getting involved as a young kid. Yeah,
and Bob could have ratted him out to the attackers and didn't, but it's not quite the same as being,
maybe
being responsible.
He was Jesus.
Here we go.
Symbolism time.
Jesus.
He was down from on
Pontius
high.
Pilate, wasn't he? Bob was Jesus. Sacrificed.
Oh yeah, he sacrificed himself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that
Pontius Pilate was the. What was that?
The priest is God then, because he's looking down on his son being sacrificed.
Oh, there we are.
Mm-hmm. Do we have is this symbolism time? Did we not have a thing for that?
Yeah, let's go.
Fernando? Yes. Oh, fantastic.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, we've got some symbolism. Right, so the priest is God, or possibly the crowd that yelled "Free Barabbas." Pontius Pilate is the weedy little guy that sells them speed and beats him up.
Yep.
Bob is Jesus, which makes
It's
Bob's
Diane.
girlfriend Mary Magdalene.
Yep.
Yeah, we're getting there. So we are to hope that he'll be out of hospital in 3 days and he'll be fine. But yeah, he very much did die for the sins of Father Murphy.
It all comes back to Jesus, doesn't it? Every bloody time. It
Yeah,
always fits.
it's the greatest story ever told, Laura.
So, but he's not God then, he's all of us. The priest is all of us. If Bob is dying for his sins.
Yeah.
Oh my
That is
God.
true. Yes.
We are all the priest.
Wow. Yeah, he had it so easy when he was younger.
No.
Wow.
It works.
Not that it's moralising or anything. What other symbolism have we got?
Symbolism.
How good was the sheriff's convention?
Yeah, nice.
That was hilarious. Just these cars everywhere. It almost seemed like, that for that to be how he starts going straight, he had to take such a big leap, such a big risk of smuggling a dead body out of a motel room, surrounded by 100 sheriffs, all in their cars.
Yes.
That could not have been a more big, high risk getting rid of a body. And he took the leap, and he did it, and he made it through. That was pretty cool. So the music throughout, we kept having this song, "The Israelites," didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Is that related?
Sounds it. I didn't notice.
It was usually when they were escaping something, wasn't it? When they were going on the road, when he was going back to go on the Methadone.
So
program.
they were the Israelites. And he was Moses.
He was Moses,
leading them through. And even, and doing so much for them and helping them, get rid of the body and everything. Teaching them how to rob the stores and stuff. And yet, he was the one who, that they had all this success afterwards where they were managing, but he had gone. And that is that Moses saw the promised land from the top of a mountain, didn't he? But died before the Israelites got there.
Oh, yes.
And that's him. He left before they could. He did so much for them, but he never made it himself.
Oh, and there was a lot of wandering in the desert, wasn't there?
Yes.
Just going through different hotel rooms and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not still alive.
I don't think
so
I
he
knew
led
that
his
either.
people out of Egypt, and I don't know what Egypt was
He
in
didn't
this
get
case.
to the promised land.
No, Moses didn't get to the
Well,
promised
that's
land.
a nice thank you, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, well.
God was
kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Merciless. Yes.
Well, isn't that
right,
kind of
isn't it? They
beautiful,
took
though?
them-
No, it's not beautiful at all.
Oh.
You work your whole life for something, you see it, and then you just fall off the rock or whatever.
Yeah, but he
happens.
was doing it for his people, wasn't he? And he died as soon as just after he knew that his people had made it and that he was safe. That was his goal. That was what he wanted to do. I think we're supposed to believe that Moses would have died happy.
Huh.
Just as Bob left the drug world behind him, happy.
Wait, do we think that Bob died?
I don't.
I
don't
do.
know.
You do?
I do. I don't think it's a coincidence that the ambulance was a repurposed hearse.
Oh. Yeah. Okay, didn't...
I couldn't figure that
Yeah.
out.
It looked a lot like a hearse to
What
me.
what were his last words? He was something about how he was going to live. But yeah, you're right. What a cruel irony.
It reminded me of, obviously for that very reason, the end of In Bruges, where we don't know whether he's going to live or die.
I don't remember that.
Oh, sorry, I spoiled the ending of In Bruges for you.
That's right, I have seen it.
One thing that was quite a nice touch was we saw him going into the ambulance at the very start. And to me, it was very clear that he was in there because of an overdose or something to do with drugs.
I also thought that.
And the result was, only very tangentially related to drugs, and it was after he'd been clean for however long. I thought that was a really good touch. Really diverted our expectations.
Yes, I think that's why I like the film. It constantly diverted my expectations.
Yeah. It was a good film, wasn't it?
I thought it was.
It was, yes. Thank you very much for this discussion.
Yeah.
Just on the while we're still on the kind of symbolism, right? I think the characters were kind of I liked them, but they were kind of stereotypes of members of like a gang of drug users, which is that we have Bob, the ingenious but callous and manipulative, charismatic, at least in the beginning, guy. And then the other guy is just this classic kind of dope fiend stoner.
Shaggy.
Shaggy. Yeah, he's Shaggy. Oh no, don't listen. Let's wait for that.
And Bob is Fred. And this is why they've got to think about dogs.
Oh, shit. Totally works.
Oh, wait.
Sorry.
They were all just high the whole time in Scooby-Doo.
Sorry, go on.
Oh. Diane is obviously Daphne, and then fucking
let's
Nadine
finish it off.
is Velma.
She's the smart one.
Yeah.
Loser that can't take drugs.
Yeah. And Father Murphy is the old guy at the start that warns them not to go down that road.
Oh, yeah.
And then turns out to be the cops in disguise the whole time. Sorry.
Anyway.
Stereotypes. So you think those are clear stereotypes that are well established?
Maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. But then with the women, we have Diane, who's this kind of more hardened drug user. And I think there's kind of a whore Madonna thing going on with her and with Nadine, which is that Nadine's this innocent, sweet girl. She doesn't know how to use drugs. Like, we never really see her in a sexual way. Whereas Diane, she gets caught by the police in her bra, and she's trying to like instigate this sort of sex with Bob a couple of times. And especially when they get caught by the police, Diane's in her bra, and Nadine is wrapped in this very sort of colourful childlike blanket. But on the other side, we've got this kind of masculinity, femininity. Sorry, I went really into analytical when I was watching this. When they've got the story of the Bob, Dog was the one who was like, Bob was the one who was like, it led the police to our home, that's why we can't have a dog. And Diane was the one who was like crying because the dog was put down. So we've got this very interesting kind of different perspectives on why they shouldn't have a dog. Diane was upset that it was put down. I just think it's interesting. There. Yes, those are but I think they did work some nuance and depth into their characters, and then they kind of explored that as the film went on.
Yeah, okay.
So, while we're talking about the characters, why was Nadine with them? Because as far as I could tell, she wasn't an addict. And I just didn't see why she was tagging along with them.
I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. Like, she was obviously very young. I think she was meant to be a teenager who just kind of was in this romantic relationship with, is it Rick? I can't remember.
Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think, they lived kind of like these cool outlaws rebelling against dominant society. I could see how you might get a bit wrapped up in that.
Yeah, okay, so she just thought it was glamorous or something.
Maybe, yeah. I guess they said that they picked her up as she was a cashier in a drugstore, so maybe it was the boredom again. Like, yeah,
maybe easily influenced and just sort of goes along with whatever. Huh.
So I have something that might be a bit of symbolism, but I'm not sure. So when he's burying Nadine, he's got dirt on his hands. They kept rubbing at the dirt, and it reminded me a lot of Macbeth trying to wash the blood off.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Out damn spot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know what it was, but I feel like there could be something to do with his guilt and his sense of responsibility and being weighed down by that.
That did occur to me, but they didn't do much with it. It was just a hint, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
See, it occurred to you now.
Yeah. It occurred to me as well.
Fact,
I totally thought that.
Also, all of that interesting stuff Laura said earlier, I've got that written down here. I was going to say that.
Nice. The last thing I've written in my notes, I think, is that they did some nice close-ups. Like a kind of motif was these close-ups. So that in the beginning we had the heroine, and then later on there was a close-up shot of the tea brewing. And I thought the crowbar was then contrasted with this panning across of the tools in his new job as well. So there was these kind of dualisms.
Oh, that's nice. The tea bag annoyed me because it was already tea, and then he put a tea bag in it. So, how hard would it have been to just have a cup of water that you put a tea bag in?
But what if you want to enjoy like the mixture of the two teas?
Well, you should put both tea bags in at the start.
Different teas need different times to brew, though, don't they?
No. take them out at different times.
Maybe it's the same bag and it just wasn't strong enough.
It was a dry bag.
Oh, right. Maybe he likes his tea really strong, still a touch of the addict in him.
Well, put 2 tea bags in at the start.
Wanted that hit of caffeine.
It's just Americans not knowing how to make tea.
That's true.
It's like putting toast in a toaster. Like, what are you doing? Ruined the film.
It's pretty unwatchable after that, to be fair. Oh, it's put me in a really bad mood. I'd forgotten about that.
Oh no.
Don't worry, we'll make you a cup of tea afterwards with 1 tea bag. We'll do it all properly.
Are you going to put it in after it's already tea? Because that's how you make tea.
Hot water, tea bag comes out, dash of milk. Give it to you.
Pop some toast in the toaster while you're at it.
Yeah. I do that most days, but...
Who was your favourite character, Fernando?
My favorite character was definitely Bob, Matt Dillon. I thought he was just incredibly handsome. I was like, I cannot believe that
very handsome
people that are this handsome exist.
Yeah.
I
think, to be honest, that is probably what made the film enjoyable for me.
I kept thinking he looked like Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I thought he looked like him, but his mannerisms were those of Jessie from Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, okay.
It's like a perfect blend of those two.
Not bad.
I'm surprised that young Matt Dillon wasn't in more things. I mean, maybe he was, but I've never seen him before. I know that he was in Crash when he was older, and I can't say he made a very good impression.
Yeah, he's a good-looking lad.
Alas.
Yeah. What was the last film? At least
we've got this film. The last film was about drums. Whiplash.
Oh, of course, yes.
What was the link?
The link. Ooh.
Addiction. That's an obvious one.
To drumming.
Both had sort of confused endings that I wasn't sure what they were trying to say.
There's the link. Michael was confused.
Nailed it.
No, we can't use the same one for every film.
This is a hard one, isn't it? I don't really know.
They both kind of stopped doing what they were doing, as in the drummer stopped kind of drumming, and drug users stopped using drugs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, almost. Actually, didn't it? We had a period of lull before the forces of his life re-entered and took over again.
There we go. Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's the same film.
Half done.
So I have two moments where I thought the film was going to go slightly differently, and I wonder if I can propose my alternatives
Great.
for those sections.
Amazing.
So they're having this lull in robberies because of the hex.
Oh yeah.
30-day lull, yeah.
And that's exactly when there's a stakeout on them. What if they just hadn't robbed anywhere for the 30 days and then the police had stopped watching them because they were clearly not doing anything, and he hadn't just dicked about with like getting the guy shot and stuff? They could just have not had the police watching them if they just left it for those 30 days.
That'd be the smart move.
It wouldn't have been much of a film because they wouldn't have had to go travelling and stuff, but that would be one alternative. And I thought I was being really smart at the end when, not Nadine, Diane came back and she said, "This is a gift from me and Rick and everyone." And she got him to confess to the murder or to hiding Nadine's body.
Ooh.
I thought she was bugged because the cop
she was
had been
wearing
in
a
there.
wire.
The cop had been in the room.
Oh my God.
And I thought when he took the bag to the priest and they opened it, that's what was going to be in it.
Oh,
or
Jesus.
that's why she wouldn't take her jacket off. Or so, there were just so many hints that there was something going on there. And then
wow.
totally wasn't.
Oh, that's an amazing conclusion.
Well, that would have been very upsetting.
It would have been.
But yeah, genius.
Yeah, instead she was just trying to ruin his rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So,
I think
she
that
wasn't
made
that bad
sense
after
for
all.
her.
Yeah, probably.
She
She
was-
thought she was
I
doing a
think-
good thing.
She felt very betrayed by his leaving her to the life that they'd been in together for so long.
I can see why she was hurt by him. Like, she couldn't get out of that life and he was just leaving.
Yeah.
Those are my two alternative versions.
Yeah, brilliant way to wrap up.
Excellent. Anything else? I think I've said everything.
That's all my thoughts.
What have
Fernando?
we not said?
Yeah, what have we not said?
No, that's the lot for me.
Cool.
Should I play the music? Like Fernando, did you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Three, two, one.
Paper.
Scissors. Yes.
Oh,
Well, I've got a film picked out right now,
excellent.
which is one that's been discussed already. It is Death on the Nile with Maggie Smith and Angela Lansbury and whoever the hell else you said.
Fantastic. Oh, brilliant.
Death on the Nile.
Betty Davis.
Oh,
Betty
no.
Davis. Oh my God.
Man. Cannot wait.
Bring it on.